What's going on, everyone? It's your boy, Ernest Dove. I'm back. I'm ready for the start of the season, but obviously, while we wait on the Major League season to begin, why not spend more time talking about the minor leagues and the upcoming 2024 season for all the affiliates? As we can start to see on social media, some of the rosters are being sent out and kind of posted online now. So I wanted to take a few minutes to kind of run down my thoughts on five particular Mets minor leaguers that may be having some breakout seasons coming up in this 2024 season. As you know, for me, I don't always pick a lot of the top prospects. I really go deep and down into the farm. So some of the guys you may know a lot about, maybe some you don't know as much about, depending on how much you followed me. But I guess, hey, without further ado, I wanted to give my thoughts, not just my own thoughts, my own amateur scouting and eyes. This is also some information that I've been getting in the last year or so through the offseason from some staff and coaches and scouting in the Mets organization. So, again, these are all opinions as well, but I do try to back some of them up with some very professional thoughts and insight and intel. So let me go ahead and start with outfielder Simon Juan, who some of you did get to see in Major League Spring. He's still only 18 years old until July when he turns 19. Last season in the Complex League, he struggled. He only hit 220 with a 596 OPS, but at the end of the year in August, he hit 290 with an 823 OPS in August to end last season. So obviously, still very young. My information as well from him was, hey, this can happen sometimes when guys officially transition stateside. So he went from the DSL, he came stateside, kind of rushed at like that 17, 18 age range. And here he is already stateside playing in the Complex League, which already now at this point, with less affiliates, it's a pretty high level of play still now in professional baseball because of the lessening of all the rosters and everything to begin with. So again, the sky seems pretty high still on Simon Juan. Defensively, he played all three outfield positions. So the jury can still be out on where he looks. Is he going to be a center fielder? Can he show power and gain some strength later on as a young player? Maybe move to a corner. My main understanding at this point, I'll go with him being an outfield prospect still, which is obviously still very much needed in the Mets organization. And again, he showed up in Major League Spring games and hit 3 for 6. He had 3 hits in Major League Spring games. That's pretty amazing for an 18-year-old, regardless of who he was facing in those at-bats. I just feel like, of course, we have to keep an eye on some of the main things. And when it comes to the younger players, you got to keep an eye on the walk rate and K rate. The walk rate wasn't very high. The K rate was. And again, as a young player, as he progresses through the years, I mean, what are we looking at? I don't know how to comp players, but is he going to have that trajectory like an Alex Ramirez or an Ahmed Rosario? Or will he gain more plate discipline as the next couple of years go on? That's all going to be very, very important. Also, depending on his power numbers. What kind of power can he generate up the levels? We're really not going to see much power from almost anyone in the Complex League, in low A, even some in high A. It's tough to hit in Brooklyn a lot of home runs, unless you're probably Pete Alonso. So before we worry about any kind of power, let's worry about walk rate, K rate, and let's see what kind of hit tool he shows. And in my opinion, before these information comes out, he could be one of those guys again in the Complex League to low A for the entire 2024 season. So let's see how he continues to adjust. I know he's not currently even ranked in the top 30 by MLB Pipeline as far as the Mets farm system. I would think he's definitely a top 30 caliber guy. So maybe my projection is his breakout season will put him back into top 30 rankings on all kind of websites and all publications. The second guy I wanted to talk about was Nick Morabito. First and foremost, I'm not even sure how to define him defensively, so I'll get into that. But Nick Morabito is 20 years old. He played mostly center field last year, but he also logged time in left and right, as well as some time at second base. So there's also some infield time, as well as all the outfield spots. Possibly the jury is still out, especially with, if you see me online, I've talked about a lot of the players at this point It's really jumbled up in the low minors with basically 50 middle infielders, like the joke of the San Diego Padres. Their entire lineup looks like they're all former shortstops. So I think the Mets have, in a way, gone that route as well. They basically have over a dozen to 20 middle infielders that are all sprinkled now stateside between the complex league, low A and high A. So for a guy like Nick Morabito, my main information from the start of last season was that Nick Morabito was a work in progress. And it kind of showed. He started in the complex league and had a 647 OPS. And then come July, the second month, he hits 440 over 12 games before obviously earning a very well deserved promotion to low A. And then again, as the adjustment period started, he started low his first month in low A hitting wise. And then by August, he started getting hot and he ended up hitting 350 in September. So Nick Morabito, outfielder, maybe infielder, utility guy, work in progress, but the numbers were starting to get there big time as a hit tool. So I expect that to continue for Nick Morabito in 2024. And he reached the end of somewhere in the top 30. The MLB pipeline has him ranked. So it's good that he's in the rankings. And I'm kind of thinking maybe he can jump a little bit higher depending on what happens in 2024 if he finds a consistent position as well. That's always going to be important in rankings. Like, how do you project him? What's his ceiling? There's going to have to be an everyday kind of position probably labeled to him to be able to get into that top 20 range. So let's see, but I do expect a nice, even more of a breakout season from Nick Morabito. Now, to end my lists of sorts, I want to go with three arms to finish this video. One, this is a guy I've talked about a lot, but I want to bring him up again because even during the most recent updated top 30 list from MLB Pipeline, they now have him at the bottom of the top 30, and his name is Saul Garcia. He's still 20 years old. He'll turn 21 in June. He's a right-handed pitcher. High walk rate, high K rate. So that's what you're getting from him. I was told from staff that he's a very talented arm with real stuff. They felt that last season he earned his transition from the pen to the St. Lucie Mets rotation because of his pure stuff and ability. They wanted to see a lot more innings from him based on what they were seeing behind the scenes. His fastball sits 92 up to 96, and they say with some development and at his best, he can top 97 in a game with his fastball. They also feel overall he's a bit of a fastball slider guy. So if I were to project him long term for Saul Garcia, could he potentially transition to be a pure fastball slider reliever? I don't know. I don't want to pigeonhole him, especially when he jumped a lot of innings from the year previously to last year. So he ate starter innings last year after being more of a reliever innings prior. So, but the ceiling still seems very high based on what I'm being told. And as far as a third pitch, I'm told that Saul Garcia can mix in a changeup. So let's see what's been happening in the offseason. Let's check on the famous pitching lab. Let's see if Saul Garcia can add that third pitch consistently to the mix. But then again, regardless, whether it's just fastball slider or whether he mixes in a third pitch, it's always going to be about command, location, location, location. It's going to be what separates a lot of guys like this that are in the low minors. He ended the season in high A, had a couple of really good outing, not so great outing. The consistency needs to be there. So possibly as another A-ball guy with trying to get to double A, Saul Garcia, huge arm. He could do it, huge K rate. What's the command going to be like in 2024? That could also determine how much of a breakout he can have, maybe jumping into the top 20 rankings going forward after this season. Another young arm, another 20-year-old, Lionel Osas, is a guy that I covered also as well in St. Lucie last year. The staff believes that they have very high hopes for him. They had high hopes for him at the start of last season. So he did struggle during the season. So there were the high hopes based on talent, tools, pure stuff. The season didn't maybe go as planned, but they see him as one of the better arms and one of the better sliders in the entire organization. So they want to see. He also has a track record of throwing strikes. So last year, the walk rate was probably too high. Some years prior, it was lower. So now we want to see player development, again, pitching lab progress. Let's see Lionel Osas, what kind of command and location he's going to have now into the 2024 season. Was he going through some growing pains? And like a lot of the other arms, the year prior, Ovias threw 46 innings. And then last year, he threw 94. That's a very huge jump. I know there used to be a stereotype of maybe like 30 innings increments that you jump up in the levels. Here he is throwing almost 50 more innings than the year prior. So that is also something to consider along with the player development and the ups and downs. But again, we're talking about a guy with really good stuff. Could he also be a fastball slider reliever as well? Based on how excited they are still about his slider, would they make him a two pitch guy and see if they can make him also a candidate for a full time bullpen again? But let's see. But I'm excited. I'm expecting some really positive things for Lionel Osas, and that's why I wanted to have him on this list today to look out for him. Now, for my fifth guy that I wanted to talk about, I was thinking Calvin Ziegler, but I know he's a bigger name. I know he was a mystery guy as well, but he was more of an upper echelon, more hyped guy. So I'm definitely excited about Calvin Ziegler just having a breakout slash season that he's capable of having. So instead of going into that direction, the last pitcher that I wanted to talk about was 20-year-old Jonah Tong. Now, he's the young guy that I talked about a little into the start of last season because I believe he was rehabbing at the beginning in camp. So his season started slow. He didn't even pitch prior. So he was a very slow starter since getting drafted, kind of a mystery guy in witness protection program since the draft. But he did finally get some outings that were very up and down. Command and location were an issue for his minimal 10 innings. But the main thing about Jonah Tong that I'm being told is that pretty much he's a pleasure to work with. He's an upper 90s fastball guy, great kid, hard worker, very self-aware. So maybe he's also one of those guys, hopefully that determines maybe high baseball IQ, willingness to learn. A lot of positives that I was hearing about behind the scenes from coaches. And they also say that he has kind of unique movement that creates deception on top of having one of the better fastballs in the entire organization. So when you have things like that, probably the translation is, again, through pitching lab, through player development into 2024, what's going to happen with the movement? How does he maintain consistent command with some of that movement? I'm sure that's going to be important. But I feel like Jonah Tong is going to be one of those guys who could have a huge breakout season going from 10 to probably hopefully 50 plus 75 innings. I don't know how high he'll go in 2024, but I'm excited about the thought of Jonah Tong as well. And I guess, hey, there you have it. I wanted to give some of my thoughts on some possible breakout candidates in 2024. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. I'm going to try to do more and more interviews. As a quick heads up or a plug, I have an interview set up next week for a professional minor leaguer. So I want to, hopefully you guys can be on the lookout for that interview, maybe gain some cool insight and thoughts into the grind and what it's like behind the scenes for minor leaguers. And again, please stay in tune with me all through the year. Thank you so much, everybody, for following.